It is time once again for CU Immigration here on WRFU LP, Urbana, 104.5 FM, 104.5, 104.5. Let me try that again. Good evening and welcome. It is time once again for CU Immigration here on WRFU LP Urbana, 104.5 FM. A little better. My name is Mr. Garza. I will be the host, your host, the host, a host for this evening, and I'm here to let you know that WRFU is an open forum for the Urbana-Champaign community. Views expressed are those of the speakers and are not intended to represent WRFU, UCIMC, the Urbana Socialist Forum, or, as we say on the TV version, UPTV. These views are our own, and by our in this instance, I mean myself, when I offer a view, and I mean the views of the people whose words I'm reading when I am reading a story or article or opinion piece or something of that nature. So yeah, I was supposed to have a guest for this evening. My guest canceled, so you've just got me, and I didn't really necessarily prepare anything. I never prepare anything. I just always come in here and... well, anyway. So I didn't have a topic du jour, so to speak. But this is CU Immigration, so our topic is immigration, as you may have noticed. And so I'm just going to talk randomly about immigration here in the U.S. and read some stories. Most of the stories... that reference immigration or pertain to immigration that one runs across look at it through a political lens, and probably rightfully so, because really, if you think about it, immigration is two things: people moving from place to place, people making laws about people moving from place to place. And then subsets of that, like what it's like to move from place to place, and all the people who have these imaginary opinions. Well, they have real opinions, but they're based on imaginary circumstances that inform them, or presumably inform them, about the immigration situation. But really, at the heart of it, immigration is just people moving from place to place. People come from somewhere else, they come here, or they go from here to somewhere else, and that's immigration. It shouldn't be any more complicated than that. It becomes more complicated because people have opinions about it. They've decided, based sometimes on observations, often on faulty observations or limited observations. You see something that's right in front of you, and from that you extrapolate all sorts of different things, and you come up with an opinion based on what little you do know of it. And that's probably the biggest problem. This is what we call low information voters suffer from this problem more than anyone else. There are people who go through life not only absorbing bits and pieces of what they hear, read, see, that's going on around them. And from those bits and pieces, they try to make sense of what's happening when questions arise about whatever. So when it's time to vote, for example, since low information voters is a standard term, they try to decide who to vote for based on the little that they know about something. And so very often with people like that, they haven't really made up their minds about much of anything. They don't really have a firm opinion. Like if you were to just grab them at the dinner table and say, hey, what do you think of the Trans-Pacific Partnership? Likelihood would be that they would never have heard of it, or they would have heard of it only vaguely. They would have heard of it through someone else's making an opinion about it. So what they would know about it is based on what they read or heard this or that politician saying about the topic. and that would be their opinion. So they would, depending on what they thought about that person, they would either believe it and say, well, it's this terrible thing, or oh, it's this great thing. And, they would either trust that person implicitly or have no trust for them and say, oh, well, if X person likes it, then I am against it, or vice versa. And so kind of that's how they go along. And politicians love that kind of person because they can play on sort of tribal instincts. They wear their hair, their clothes, they talk like you do. They come to your town, they hang out with somebody who's influential, and and so you automatically go, oh, I like that guy there. He's one of us. He's like me. So I believe his opinions on things, and I trust him and follow him, et cetera, and on down the road from there. So that's one primary reason that immigration has become such a political football, as they call it. Excuse me. Because it's just so easy to to manipulate, to massage. I guess a combination of what things look like and what kind of statistics that you can dig up. So those are very easy to massage because, as we've often said on this show, immigration in reality is very much an individual thing. Why did you go to this place that you went to from the place you came from? Why are you here? Why did you go there? You can make sort of grand statements about things in a general way. Well, immigration tends to X. It tends to lower wages or raise property values, or whatever that thing is. You can make those kinds of statements based on quantitative data that you dig up, that you often choose because it makes the statement that you want it to make. Because there's a lot of data out there. And as we pointed out innumerable times on this show, if you look at just one aspect of something, you can create a certain image based on that aspect. So you can say, oh, well, blue-collar, uneducated workers' wages become depressed when a lot of immigrants come to a certain area. So, immigration must be bad for the economy because it lowers workers' wages. Well, no, it doesn't lower all workers' wages. It lowers uneducated or blue-collar workers' wages because the immigrants are competing for the same jobs in that particular category. What you're not seeing in that statistic is that these people come in, they start paying taxes, they start their own businesses, they start hiring people. So it could be raising the standard of living, say, for everybody in the community, even as it's lowering wages for this particular group, or something like that. That's just an example, and not a very good one, but you get my point. Statistics frequently say what you want them to say. Even if they're absolutely 100% rock solid true, that doesn't mean that they mean what people claim they mean. But politicians love that because it allows them to not only make the statement, but to back it up with something. So that's where all these low information people come from, and they why they're so golden to your average politician, because they only know a little bit about what they're talking about. So here's a story that I thought was kind of interesting. This is from Politico about immigration. And our friend, I hate bringing him up again, but he's right there in the forefront of this because he's such He's so opinionated about it. He's got such extreme opinions about it, and he makes it a point of being kind of on the cutting edge of anti-immigration rhetoric. So this is entitled, Trump Hits Turbulence with Immigration Hardliners. What, you say? How could that possibly be? He's about as hardline as you can get. Well, let's find out. So the candidate of Build That Wall is suddenly having a hard time with one constituency that was fully in his camp, immigration hardliners. Alarm bells went up after Donald Trump openly declared at a GOP debate in Detroit earlier this month that he was changing his position on high-skilled foreign workers, seemingly undermining a key plank of his restrictive immigration platform. Then came a stream of news reports showing how Trump used the same guest worker programs he now criticizes. Though Trump recovered somewhat by calling last week for a pause in legal immigration, an aggressive stance lauded by hardliner groups, the GOP frontrunner is still coming under scrutiny from a tough-on-immigration types on an issue that launched his meteoric rise in the Republican presidential race. Quote, he hasn't done a very good job of connecting what he's been saying in both debates and his other press appearances and in his prep rallies versus what he wrote in his immigration policy. Chris Chemensky, Director of Content and Activism for Numbers USA, said in an interview Monday, I think for us, what is posted on his website is very, very helpful, but the rhetoric hasn't matched. Numbers USA, a national grassroots group that calls for limiting both illegal and legal immigration, has dinged Trump for his comments that seem to advocate for a boost in both high-skilled and low-skilled immigrant workers on the March 3rd debate. The group lowered Trump to a B+ on its scorecard, but after the March 10th debate in Miami, the organization raised his grade back to his previous A- rating. That's not to say the group still doesn't have questions. Sorry, I scrolled off the page. About Trump vis-a-vis immigration. Chemensky said, obviously we don't condone Trump's use of a guest worker program for foreign students at his hotel in Chicago, the subject of an Associated Press investigation on Monday. Others who call for stricter immigration laws are also adopting an increasingly critical tone toward Trump. Whoa, really? He doesn't know enough about the subject and won't listen to his own staffers to be able to distill a clear, coherent message, added Mark Krikorian, the executive director of the Center for Immigration Studies, a think tank that calls for more restrictive immigration policies. In other words, I'm not sure he's so much flip-flopping as just making this stuff up off the top of his head. And I have to pause here and laugh because it's not exactly like that should be news to anyone that that's what Trump does. But, oh well, apparently this guy is just now discovering this. Anyway, back to our story. Trump won sustained praise from immigration critics last summer when he rolled out his policy proposal, which was crafted with input from Senator Jeff Sessions, of course, a top Hill proponent of restricting immigration who has since endorsed Trump for president. Though the wall along the U.S.-Mexican border gets the most attention, Trump's policy paper also delves into legal immigration, calling for a requirement to hire U.S. citizens over immigrants for various guest worker programs, and to boost the prevailing wage for employees with an H-1B visa. That program is intended to recruit highly skilled immigrant workers to the United States, but has come under increased scrutiny by Trump and other GOP presidential hopefuls following stories of alleged abuse of the visa by major corporations such as Disney. His comfort zone is the wall, said Krikorian, who also writes for National Review, a conservative publication that has declared itself anti-Trump. Anything outside his comfort zone, he's just winging it. I thought it was an excellent paper written by someone in Sessions' office, added Heather McDonald, a fellow at the conservative Manhattan Institute, and it's apparent that he never read it. Ooh. A spokeswoman, for Trump campaign did not return a request seeking comment. Another U.S. immigration program criticized in the Trump plan, the J-1 visa for foreign students, was the focus of an Associated Press report Monday that found Trump used the program to hire labor for his Chicago property, primarily at the upscale establishment Terrace Restaurant. The campaign acknowledged his use of the program to the AP, but said that he would reform it as president. Meanwhile, Bloomberg reported earlier this month that Trump made use of the EB-5 visa, a shortcut to a green card used by wealthy foreign investors, for a Trump property in New Jersey. Following the report, conservative commentator Michelle Malkin, who is a piece of work, I might add, asked, how does Trump respond to the debunking of the bogus job creation math upon which the entire cash for citizenship swindle rests? Have any other Trump projects been subsidized by EB-5 China money? Well, during the Detroit debate, Trump's rivals pressured the businessman over his use of a guest worker program for low-skilled foreign labor at his luxury club in Palm Beach, Florida, first described in a February report by the New York Times. It's a few months, 5 months at the most. People don't want a short-term job, Trump said in defending his use of foreign workers at Mar-a-Lago during the Detroit debate. We want to hire as many Americans as we can, but they don't want part-time, very short part-time jobs. Those comments drew criticism from Numbers USA, which lowered its ratings partially based on those remarks. But Trump returned somewhat to their good graces with his performance in Miami when he entertained a 1 or 2 year pause in legal immigration. He also acknowledged his use of the H-1B visa program, though he added, I shouldn't be allowed to use it. We shouldn't have it. Very, very bad for workers. I shouldn't be allowed to use it. Yeah, okay. But because it's there, I have to? I don't know. Anyway, other immigration hardliners are willing to give Trump the benefit of the doubt. Oh, of course. Quote, everybody knows that the policy framework that he has developed was hatched in part with the expertise of Jeff Sessions and people aligned with Jeff Sessions, said Dan Stein, president of the Federation for American Immigration Reform, which also favors stricter immigration policies. Donald Trump is known for one thing, and that is the ability to assemble a good team and get things done. I don't know what that means. Sessions, who maintains a sterling reputation with groups that favor lowering immigration, acknowledged in an interview last week that Trump's comments in Detroit initially caused confusion, but credited the campaign for quickly clarifying those remarks. And following the Miami debate, Sessions praised Trump for his clarity and conviction as he spoke about immigration. This determination to protect American workers from reckless trade and immigration policies will grow the Republican Party and position us to win in November, Sessions said in a statement Saturday released by the Trump campaign. It's premature. That's a word, isn't it? Oh, premature. That's better. To say whether Trump voters would turn on the businessman's muddled comments on immigration. Chemensky, the Numbers USA official, indicated that members of his group are just as divided as Republican primary voters. People who support Trump, they just kind of dismiss everything Trump says on immigration or things that he has done in the past, Chemensky said. Those against Trump, he added, are very critical and have been saying we need to highlight some of these abuses. He's got that right. Well, so, yeah. So that just goes to show, like, how actually Trump's a very bad model for how to show the way politicians use immigration, because he doesn't do it skillfully at all. The fascinating thing about the guy is that he's a terrible politician in every sense of the word. He's a media personality, so that attracts people. He has a certain ability to project charm or whatever that attracts some people too. He's very famous and has been for a long time, so that gives people a sense of familiarity, or they think they know him when they don't. But as a politician, he's awful. And that's the weird thing about why he's so popular, is because his political acumen is so low that you would think that people now looking at politicians and comparing them, one politician to another, would go, oh, well, this guy's terrible. He's crap. Can't vote for him. But apparently, right now, at least the people that like him, that's why they like him, because he's, I don't know what he's so obviously not a politician. And I think in some weird way, and this is partly true, a lot of politicians just tell you what they think you want to hear. I mean, we all know that. We've seen that, many examples of that. And so I think to a certain extent, Trump benefits from being a terrible politician, because people look at him and say, oh, he's not a politician. And then they think, for some reason, they expand that idea on out to, oh, that must mean that he's telling the truth, that he's saying what he means, as opposed to politicians who say what they think you want to hear. But in actual point of fact, Trump, I can't say whether or not he's saying what he thinks you want to hear, but he's pretty darn good at speaking to people, to a certain segment of people, and saying what they do want to hear. And it should be interesting when and if, we'll still say if, he gets the nomination for his party, to see how he tries to speak to people, to an entirely different sort of people. Will he continue to just speak to the same group and just continue to speak to that group and continue to represent that group and just forget everybody else? Or will he somehow try to massage his message to make it more palatable to like everybody else, which is like women, minorities, anybody with a brain? Sorry, but I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. Whatever. But anyway, it should be interesting to see how he does that, if he does it, and then to see how his fans react to that, because part of his appeal has, taking my glasses off here for a second, they're cloudy. Part of his appeal, as I said, it has been his supposed honesty, his supposed saying what he means, and speaking, unafraid to speak the truth and all that sort of thing. So if he starts changing his rhetoric, are his supporters going to follow along with that, or are they going to go, oh, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense? Or are they going to be crafty and go, oh, well, he's a politician now, so he has to do that, but what he really means is what he was saying before? I don't know. It should be really interesting to see how that plays out and just what happens. But I can tell you one thing that's going to happen, and that is other countries are not going to be very pleased if he becomes elected. So here, for example, is a story entitled, Mexico City Legislators Ask to Ban Donald Trump from Their Country. You don't hear this very often with presidential candidates. Or you might say you have probably never heard it about a presidential candidate. At least I know I never have. So here we go. Legislators in Mexico City are asking the federal government to ban Donald Trump from entering the country, citing the GOP presidential hopeful's repeated anti-Mexican comments. The proposed The proposal passed unanimously on Wednesday, according to Deputy Jose Manuel Delgadillo of the Conservative National Action Party. He described the document, known as a point of agreement, as a largely symbolic recommendation to the federal government that the local legislature lacked the ability to enforce. But he told the World Post that Mexico City legislators felt the need to prod President Enrique Peña Nieto to confront Trump, who they view as a hyper-nationalist who has kindled anti-Mexican resentment by describing Mexicans in broad terms as rapists and calling for the construction of a wall across the length of the U.S.-Mexico border. What we're saying is that if he wants to build a wall so that Mexicans can't enter his country, then he is not welcome in our country, Delgadillo told World Post. What we need now is for President Peña Nieto to make a strong statement condemning Mr. Trump's anti-Mexican comments. Deputy Victor Hugo Romo of the left-wing Revolutionary Democratic Party, which introduced the point of agreement, referred to Trump as primeval, egocentric, and primitive, before going on to compare Trump to Hitler in public remarks Wednesday. Not pulling any punches there. Hitler was very popular, Romo said. He generated a lot of sympathy by adopting nationalist politics that vindicated the Germans' sense of self-worth. Trump is practically a copy. I consider Donald Trump a chauvinist, a misogynist who fosters and leans towards repression. He doesn't respect diversity. The Mexico City legislators' anger echoes comments from two furious former presidents who have sounded off against Trump in recent days. Felipe Calderon called Trump racist and said he was turning the United States into a neighbor that we're all going to end up rejecting and hating. Vicente Fox said repeatedly that he was not going to pay for that expletive-deleted wall, referring to Trump's proposal to require Mexico to pay for the wall he wants to build across the southern U.S. border. But Peña Nieto of the Revolutionary Institutional Party has taken a more cautious approach. He's largely refrained from publicly criticizing the Republican frontrunner, and his chief of staff, Francisco Guzman, played down concerns about a Trump presidency on Tuesday, though he avoided mentioning Trump by name. Anyone who becomes president of the United States will have to work with Mexico, Guzman said, according to Bloomberg News. It would be difficult to reverse 20 years of integration. Yeah. So, it's in a way, okay, I'll admit it, I'll out myself here. It is cheap and easy to talk about Trump on this show or on any show because he's so obviously wrong about most of what he says, and he's so obviously ill-suited to the job, ill-prepared for it, incapable of doing it well. It's so obvious that it's easy. I don't have to think. I can sit here and go, oh, Trump, and then, there you go. Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. Or not. Excuse me. Long time coming, but it finally got it. It's spring. And I am allergic to spring and summer and fall and winter in various ways, I've noticed. So pardon me for snuffling in your ear. But anyway, so I will admit, as a talk show host, I guess it's a talk show, a talking show host, that when in doubt, talk about Trump because he's so easy to talk about. You don't have to think. You don't have to, really go, oh, okay, well, let me peel back these layers to give you the subtleties, to inform you of the subtleties involved, the complexity of the issue, so that you can understand, what's wrong with this otherwise seemingly reasonable sounding, nothing like that with Trump. It's pretty much just like, okay, Trump said this. The truth is obviously to anyone with half a brain this. Therefore, ha to him and yay to us. And that's easy. And I apologize for using it, but it's hard to avoid. It's really hard to avoid because, I guess it's hard to avoid, and it's fair in a way not to avoid it because this guy is currently the front runner of the Republican primary.